All right, welcome to Bet the Edge. I'm Jay Croucher, joined as always by the whale capper Drew Dinsick. Today we're going to talk about King Henry and those Titans and the win last night over the Packers, the repercussions of that into some futures markets. We're going to bring in Brad Spielberger from PFF to go through the Sunday slate, and then we'll close out with our best bets. But Drew, how are you? How'd you like Thursday Night Football?
It was good. Over came home. Second half over was also a winner. I didn't have huge stakes on those, but that was fun. And Tractorcito continues to carry this team, although really that was the defense more than anything. It's just an impressive Titans find a way to win. It was a tough spot for them. Obviously, a short week on the road in Lambeau. It's never going to be an easy win against Aaron Rodgers in those conditions, and they made it look easy. And I think realistically at this point, that was. I don't really want to say that clinches a playoff spot for them, but it might just do that. I'm currently looking at only about a 6% chance that they work their way out of the playoff picture right now. And the fact that we're here with the 7-3 Tennessee team, considering my opinion of these guys coming into the season, is pretty amazing. All Ryan Tannehill does is win regular season games. All Mike Vrabel does is, get the most out of his team every single week. And, I think Titans deserve to be celebrated a little bit for this particular win. Now, I don't give them much of a chance against the Titans, for lack of a better word, the Titans of the AFC. They are not. And I think, come playoff time, they're going to be a pretty ripe fade. But, certainly keeping an eye on, Henry's usage, Henry's health. If he ends up being your top rusher, I think he's still very much in the OPOY conversation. And then similarly, keeping an eye on Vrabel, if he steals this one seed, and if Philly slips, if there's no obvious candidate in the NFC to get Coach of the Year, then Vrabel getting a back-to-back COY would be pretty unbelievable, and his price is pretty huge. So not to make light of a situation because it's not funny, but Todd Downing getting a DUI this morning was a little wild. If they end up parting ways with him, it's going to be interesting to see how that impacts this offense. I don't love Todd Downing as far as kind of a guy, offensive concepts. They may be an upgrade depending on who they put in that position, in that role. But he does seem to at least be pushing the right buttons with the tools that he's got. Worthwhile seeing, contributions at long last from Treylon Burks last night. I think, Titans are an interesting team.
Yeah, I think if they do bring a new offensive coordinator, hopefully we can find someone who gives my man Derrick Henry the ball a little bit more. 28 carries, not enough last night for his OPOY case. I think he's going to need 35 carries to get to 100 yards. Wasn't super pretty, but at least he did break the big reception and threw the passing TD for whatever that's worth.
Yeah, he does it all. Yeah.
He does it all. Yeah, I think the Titans, the key to their upside, and we'll ask Brad about this, is around Treylon Burks, who I think is the one element that can begin to replicate at least some of what A.J. Brown did. But, their offense, it's not pretty, though Tannehill was pretty good last night outside of that pretty disastrous pick. And then the Packers, they drift now out to 55-1 for the NFC. The NFC North is completely done. They're not winning that. So the Titans are definitely the more interesting team in futures markets. The AFC South is effectively done too. They're 14-1 to win the AFC, which I don't really want to get involved in unless it's looking like they might win the 1 seed. But yeah, certainly an interesting team. Their defense is good enough to win the AFC. I just don't know about their passing game. But anyway, let's bring in Brad Spielberger now from PFF. Brad, how'd you like Thursday Night Football? Is that your type of game?
It was a good game. It was a little messy at times, but I think we saw what Tennessee has, the recipe they've used this entire season. Great run defense, top 5 in EPA per rush allowed, unlike Dallas, where Green Bay was able to run on them. And they usually are terrible in the second half. They actually were lowest in EPA per play in the second half. So you talked about Todd Downing a little bit. Great unscripted plays. They always seem to score on that first drive, and then they fall off a cliff. They didn't quite do that last night. I couldn't agree more about the Mike Vrabel conversation. I think that's the biggest future takeaway is he should be squarely in the Coach of the Year conversation.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think obviously the bar is set incredibly high because he won it last year as a 1 seed, but the fact that, losing his top edge rushers, losing A.J. Brown and still being in this position, I think on merit, I would probably give it to Brian Daboll right now, and I'd probably have Vrabel second. But yeah, I do think certainly if other guys do fall over, then at 50-1. And here's the thing, they're a lot shorter than 50-1 to get the 1 seed, like significantly shorter than 50-1. And if he's in the 1 seed again over the Bills and the Chiefs, then I think you have to entertain the possibility. The guy who got into like even money to win Coach of the Year with 3 weeks to go last year was Bill Belichick. And that's who we're going to start off with today, Brad, talking Jets at Patriots. The Patriots are 3.5-point favorites. The total is a magnificent 38 flat. Who do you like in this game, Brad?
Yeah, it's funny. We chuckle at the over-under, but over the last 5 weeks, the Patriots and Jets are first and second in defensive EPA per play allowed and are 32nd and 31st in offensive EPA per play. So you're literally getting the 2 best defenses against the 2 worst offenses. Also, out of 46 quarterbacks with at least 10 passing attempts when pressured, Mac Jones' grade is 45th and Wilson's is 46th. So it's going to be ugly. It's going to be a defensive battle. These teams can both generate pressure at a top 10 rate. You know, it's hard for me to bet against Bill Belichick at home, coming off a bye against a team that he just always seems to beat. Zach Wilson's not going to throw maybe 3 interceptions again like last time. Mac Jones also had one of the worst throws of the season called back on a penalty, kind of a soft roughing the passer penalty that should have been a pick 6. But if anything here, I'm still laying the field goal with the Patriots.
Yeah, I'm with you on this. And I guess, what is your general read on the situation with Mac Jones in New England? Do you think that there is a bottom to buy in terms of his performance, that we have seen the worst of it, and then from here in he can somehow regress positively to what we saw from him last year?
I do. I think positive regression is inevitable. Maybe the Jets aren't a great unit to do that against, particularly, this secondary with Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed playing so well on the outside. But the Jets lost Sheldon Rankins, who's been a great rotational interior guy for them. And that's how they've been so good at getting home with 4 players, is constantly shuffling players out and keeping legs fresh. So maybe that changes things a little bit for them. But yeah, he just cannot continue to play this poorly. I know he was upset about changing from Josh McDaniels over to Matt Patricia and Joe Judge, which I think anyone would be a little bit upset about that. But I think, again, I mentioned the bye week, which of course they both had a bye week, but I think they're going to use that extra time to get right. He's probably fully healthy now with the low ankle or the high ankle sprain, and I think he'll play better football down the stretch.
Yep. Brad, I like that you mentioned Sauce Gardner. We're a very big Sauce Gardner podcast because we talked about him when he was 18-1 to win Defensive Rookie of the Year. I still think he's a bet at -175 that he is now. I know the PFF is rightfully incredibly high on Sauce, having him as, I think, a top 3 cornerback in the league in the range of, your Pat Surtains. So I like that. Interested, Brad, do you think that Garrett Wilson at 20-1 on PointsBet is any chance for Offensive Rookie of the Year, just with how Ken Walker really struggling last week kind of made that a bit more of an open race?
I think it's an interesting bet, right? A lot of these bets are about narratives. We talked about the Coach of the Year and all those things. And so if the Jets do make the playoffs, win 10, 11 games, like, people are going to want to vote for players in those situations. I do think it's funny. Christian Watson now leads all rookies in touchdown catches after a 5-day stretch with 5 touchdown receptions. Not saying he's going to win Offensive Rookie of the Year, but there's so much fluctuation still. There's still a lot of time there. I like that bet on Garrett Wilson. I think Olave's fading a little bit. Traylon Burks had the big game, but has missed too much time. And Ken Walker, I think you again will go back to, should Geno Smith win some type of award? Should Pete Carroll be in that Coach of the Year conversation? Like, you kind of got to balance some of the narratives against each other. And I like Wilson as a pick there.
Yeah. Regardless, I think, certainly Douglas has kind of solidified his position with the draft class he got last year. These guys all being kind of immediate contributors. Breece Hall, before he went down, was the clear favorite. And now Garrett Wilson may end up getting this award. It's unbelievable. But I agree with the sentiment. Offensive Rookie of the Year is still wide open. It's not how you start, it's how you finish. And realistically, the chaos will ensue in December and January, and some receiver or running back will ultimately emerge from that race. And I couldn't really tell you who, so you might as well shoot for some long shots. Speaking of long shots, this was a game in the Giants and the Lions that we would have said long odds that there would have been much interest in this game preseason. 2 teams probably fighting for draft position. But now Lions, a little bit of a resurgence, just in general, a little bit, market's warm on this team. And the Giants, on the other hand, all they do is win. All they find ways to do it ugly. Last week did not deserve the win. Probably definitely did not deserve the cover against the Texans, but they got it anyway. And this has been sort of the story of their season. It's just, they're defying sort of the situation they're in terms of talent and just continuing to compile W's. And now they welcome a Lions team to the Meadowlands that obviously plays a lot better indoors than outdoors because of Jared Goff's limitations with hand size. We all know this. And the Lions are catching, 3 points. And, we've seen, a decent amount of money come in to support these guys, pushing them from 3.5 down to 3. Do you agree with this market movement? And is this sort of continuing to kind of buy low on a Detroit team that a lot of people were pretty high on coming into this season?
Yeah, I thought the Lions were a bet when you had the hook. Maybe a bit tougher now that it's just a flat field goal. But, Jared Goff does tend to struggle against the blitz. The Giants, of course, and Wink Martindale are going to send pressure. But they're still 19th in pressure rate, even with their high blitz rate. And I also think particularly it's the interior, right? Dexter Lawrence is having an outrageous season right now. Leonard Williams, a great player. But the Lions have Frank Ragnow at center to maybe neutralize Dexter Lawrence a bit at nose tackle. And then I love one matchup in particular. The prop I like in this game is Amon-Ra St. Brown, receptions, receiving yards, whatever you prefer. Darnay Holmes, the slot corner for the Giants, is our 108th rated slot corner out of 115. I bet Amon-Ra St. I bet Amon-Ra St. Brown last week against Kyler Gordon, who is a rookie who's getting better, but has been very susceptible for the Chicago Bears in the slot. And he covered the over on his yards in the first half and his receptions in the third quarter. So just very easy there. Jared Goff is going to look his way with no TJ Hawkinson, everything else going on around there. Other side of the spectrum, though, Saquon Barkley might run for 200 yards against this Lions run defense.
Yeah, I think so. Brad, can you explain the New York Giants? Because every single kind of smart person around the NFL who bets professionally, everyone has the Giants rated as one of the 6 worst teams in the league. You look at PFF grade, where they're 28th overall. You look at DVOA, which is a little bit kinder to them, but still, like, my thought is basically that they are true talent, the 7-10 win team, 7-10, even 6-11 team that we thought they might be coming in, and they're just well coached, and they've been well coached enough to be in situations where they can get some bounces that have just largely gone their way. Is that basically where you're at as well?
I think you mentioned last week it was a good microcosm. The Texans were 1-4 in the red zone for, I want to say, a field goal. Like, their one touchdown, I think, was outside of the red zone. So when you're holding teams to 3 points out of 4 red zone possession, like, that's the type of bounces they're getting. All their wins are in one score. I think maybe they have one non-one score win. And we've talked a lot about this. Is there going to be a regression on the one score wins? Or, as you mentioned, is it because Brian Daboll and Wink Martindale, I think, are just such great coaches that they're actually, the consistency of winning these close games is not just flukiness and randomness, but also is execution and organization and all those things. And I think it is kind of a mix of both. But I agree, from a talent standpoint, they're not as good as their record right now.
Yeah, and I think, technically they were all 1-score wins because the Bears win was 8 points. So I'll give it 1 there, even though that's marginal. But that's their best win of the season, beating the Bears by 8. Okay. And I say best win, like, there was fluky win over the Ravens, kind of somewhat fluky over the Packers. But I feel like the Giants have gotten relatively lucky, not just in terms of the way their schedules broke, the way the ball's bouncing on the field, but the way that the NFL kind of shifted, and defense in particular has kind of tacked into the direction where what they have with Daniel Jones and Barkley as a 1-2 punch and kind of a rushing threat quarterback. And, that, like, the defense shifted obviously with a lot of too high looks in terms of, kind of concepts, and the Giants don't have anyone that was going to threaten you, and in that part of the field anyway. So it's like that doesn't really take anything away from them. And now all of a sudden you're asking them to operate in the part of the field where they wanted to. And Daniel Jones, of course, with a little bit of pop on the ground, has been sort of the recipe for success so far this season in the NFL. So I didn't see this coming. 7-10, as Jay mentioned, is still on the table. They only have 7 wins, and if they lose out from here, I don't think anyone is literally like, oh my gosh, they lost every game. I mean, I don't think really it would surprise anyone that, and to kind of close this point, they're 7.5 point dogs next week at the Cowboys on Thanksgiving. And right now they're ahead of the Cowboys in the standings for the NFC East. So
also that line is wrong. That line should be a lot higher than 7. No, seriously, like And I think the thing is like, people think that the Giants play good defense and they eke out wins. Like, they don't play good defense. This isn't a good defense. Like, they've been in some low scoring games. But I mean, you look back, like, they broke off 2 60-yard plays against the Titans in week 1 and they needed a field goal to miss at the buzzer. Yeah, they beat Baker Mayfield's Panthers, the Bears before the Bears figured out their offense, the Packers who turn out they're not any good. The Baltimore win was very, very strange and they should have lost that game. And then you have beat the Jags and the Texans. Like, I do think a reckoning is coming for the Giants. At the same time, they've banked so many wins that I think that Brian Daboll at plus 500 to win Coach of the Year is an incredible bet, just because they're like plus 200 to get to 11 wins. And if this team gets to 11-6, how does Brian Daboll not win Coach of the Year at that point? So that's one of my favorite bets on the board at the moment. But let's jump to the Cowboys, who play the Giants on Thanksgiving, as you mentioned. 1.5-point favorites at the Vikings. The total is 48.5. And I think the most people, just people who casually follow the NFL, follow betting at a distance, are really surprised that the Vikings are underdogs in this game. Do you feel that way too, Brad? Or do you think that there's a look on the Cowboys?
The Vikings aren't quite the Giants, but they're also, one-score champions and have had some things bounce their way. They've played against 4 backup quarterbacks at this point and won all of those games by 1 score, I want to say. So they have had some things go their way. I think they are a good offense. I think their defense is downright bad. But the big thing to watch here for me is Christian Darrisaw, the left tackle. He's our highest-graded tackle on either side in the entire NFL, and him and Brian O'Neill are our highest-graded tackle tandem. The Cowboys, kind of the reverse of the Giants, great rushing on the edge and don't generate much pressure up the middle, which is what gives the Vikings and Kirk Cousins a lot of issues. So if Christian Darrisaw can play, Micah Parsons and the Cowboys had 5 total pressures against the Packers and their great tackle tandem last week. So that could be an edge in favor of Minnesota if they can hold up on the outside, give Kirk Cousins enough time. And you can also run on Dallas. Dallas is 19th in EPA per rush allowed. Aaron Jones was kind of picking up 7-8 yards a clip for Green Bay. So, I do think it's interesting if Christian Darrisaw plays. I already, even without knowing that, have teased the Vikings with the 49ers. Probably my favorite bet of the week, or one of them. Bring the 49ers down to -2, the Vikings up to plus 7.5. That's one of my favorite bets of the weekend. And if Darrisaw does play, that's just gravy.
Yeah, fair point. I tend to lean Cowboys here, and it's hysterical. We started talking about how the Tennessee Titans were, 3-point dogs. They went outright. They basically sew up the division. In the same game, Minnesota basically sews up the North with the Packers loss. And yet here we are, 2 teams that we just have absolutely no really spirit to back in any way, shape, or form in the futures market. And they're the only 2 in the playoffs right now. And it's unbelievable to see, how just in general, the breaks in the schedule end up influencing win-loss record. And, another point to looking past, wins in terms of how you power rate teams. And, I don't think 1.5 is enough. I think Dallas matches up super well with Minnesota. And, just in general, I get why they deployed Parsons in more of a run-stopping role last week as an off-ball linebacker. Like, it makes sense considering who was available and the way that they expected Green Bay to largely approach that game. But I would expect to see him much more in a pass rush role in this one. And I think he could be very, very disruptive. Dallas in general matched up well against Minnesota last year when these 2 teams played. And I think, that's probably at least, at a cheap 1.5, I think that's one of the better looks on the card. But in general, do you have a thought on how long teasers have struggled this year, which is especially weird considering there's not that much difference between all of these teams. There's not like a serious margin. Like, everything should be coming in pretty close. We should, have, relatively sharp numbers here, but it's been tough on the old Wong so far in 2022.
Great point, considering the lack of scoring and the most 1-score finishes in NFL history through week 8 or 9 or whatever that was when it came out. So that is a good thought there. I'm not totally sure. This is probably a dumb answer that hasn't affected me so much so far this year on the Wong teasers. But that is an interesting note that they haven't hit. I didn't even know that, if I'm being honest. But something to monitor for sure. Maybe there's some positive regression there.
Yep. Brad, you touched on it. You kind of mentioned it, comparing the Vikings to the Giants. I don't know. Obviously, you think the Vikings are significantly better, but the Vikings are kind of the rich man's New York Giants, the Giants in a mansion, where there is some serious regression coming for this team, and they're not going to continue to win these 1-score games. And you just think about everything that happened against Buffalo. They get one of the greatest receiving performances of all time from Justin Jefferson. They get 2 Josh Allen picks and Allen or the Bills fumbling in their own end zone, and they need overtime to beat a team whose quarterback didn't practice all week and was seriously banged up on defense as well. I just think the Cowboys are materially better here. yes, it was a weird performance against the Packers. They were also down Brown and Barr, who are not the greatest players in the world, but that is being down 2 starters, and more importantly, played a part in Micah Parsons basically losing him as an edge rusher and having to play him at off-ball linebacker. So, yeah, I don't believe in the Vikings. I think that that they're going to be a team that kind of falls a little bit apart in the back end of the season. They'll still probably get the 2 seed because of all these wins that they've banked. And one thing I would say is that if the Vikings do win this game, which obviously they very easily can, it's only 1.5-point favorites at 1.5-point dogs at home, is look at Zadarius Smith's Defensive Player of the Year odds. Because if he beats Micah Parsons, creates another point of separation there. Like right now on PFF, he's 10 pressures clear of everyone else in the league. He's already had his bye. He's second in the league in sacks. He's on a team that's 8-1. This isn't a fluke because in 2019, he led the entire league in pressures. So he's got this on his track record. I mean, there's some 40-1 Zadarius DPOY out there, which I think is a little bit too long, and particularly if you can put another loss on Micah's resume. But let's jump to Chiefs Chargers. The line now is down to Kansas City -5 in LA. The total is 52. The line has largely come down because of the Chargers injury reports, where it's looking like Keenan Allen and Mike Williams might both play. Trey Pipkins as well. They've ran out of defensive tackles, which I've never seen before, against the Niners, where they're literally just out. So that's a blitz every play. But what do you make of this game, Brad?
Yeah, and that's not great going up against maybe the best interior offensive line in the entire NFL with the Kansas City Chiefs. You know, a thing I also don't like here that I thought worked in favor of the 49ers. Thanks, Robbie Gould, for missing that extra point and rooting -6.5. But the Chiefs are 5th in yards after the catch per reception, and the Chargers are 5th highest rate of missed tackles. They just cannot play in the open field. You can bully them on the interior. Yes, they're missing Juju Smith-Schuster and Mecole Hardman, but Kadarius Toney, I think, will get more and more involved, particularly over the middle. We know in the open field, all he does is make guys miss with forced missed tackles. And, of course, Travis Kelce, they've tried to play Michael Davis on him in the past. They sometimes will put Derwin James on him here and there, but they've been using Derwin James to defend the run, to do all sorts of different things. So, you know, I did think Chargers +7 was too much. I laid it the full touchdown at the beginning of the week. Now that it's under 7, it does obviously change the calculus. But, you know, the total's interesting. The over could certainly hit. I think Isaiah Pacheco could run a ton up the middle between the tackles, especially if Kansas City does get an early lead, because the Chargers are so bad to begin games. They went 4 weeks in a row being down by at least 10 points after the first quarter, and that's just not going to work against this Kansas City Chiefs football team. So, all that said, Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, if they can return, that does make a massive difference. I think Herbert is showing he's a little bit healthier, playing a little bit better, and that's been with, you know, Michael Bandy and DeAndre Carter to throw the ball to. So,
yeah, outside of the market flip-flop on Buffalo, Cleveland with the total, this has been the most aggressive market move of the week. You've seen Chargers come down from 7 to 5. Money line has moved in pretty substantially, and I think that does speak to the likelihood that the wide receivers are going to be available in this one. Obviously, the first game between these two teams on Thursday Night Football Week 2 was a coin flip. Kansas City very lucky to get that win. If they don't get the goal line pick 6, I think they probably lose that game. And Pat Mahomes, I lost track. Jay, do you remember how many turnover worthy plays Pat Mahomes had in that one? Was it like 4
he should have had a 99-yard interception return touchdown that Justin Herbert threw on the next series. So that was that entire game. This is an interesting one.
Margin between these two teams is narrow.
Yeah. It's remarkable that the Chargers are 31st in overall PFF grade. The only team worse are the Houston Texans. And I can't really disagree with that. And I think that, you know, this was a team that coming into the season had realistic Super Bowl expectations, I think. But it was a top-heavy roster. And when you lose Joey Bosa, Rashawn Slater, J.C. Jackson, who wasn't playing well anyway, but the thought of him and what he would bring to the defense, I mean, they're just, yes, they get Keenan Allen and Mike Williams back, but I just don't think they're in the same sphere as the Chiefs. And if this stays at -5, even with Allen and Williams back, I might lean Kansas City. I'm also not entirely sure the Chargers are particularly well coached, which is a shame, because I thought Brandon Staley might be the chosen one, obviously with his pre-election for analytics, but they don't seem to be particularly well coached at the moment. So I would give the edge to Kansas City there. All right, Brad, where can we find your work? Anything to plug?
Yeah, for sure. So all my content's at pff.com. You can follow me on Twitter at pff_Brad. I know it's very, very early. We're talking week 11, but our top 10 free agent ranking board came out. That's obviously kind of my big spiel, and we're building on and onto that as the weeks go on. So if you're a fan of a team that might already be out of it, like some of the teams we discussed this week, you can look forward to free agency in the draft, and we're getting covered there soon.
Excellent. Thanks, Brad. And you can follow Brad on Twitter at PFF_Brad should Twitter continue to exist. So, Brad, best of luck with all your bets, and I'll speak to you soon.
You too, guys. Thank you.
All right. Before we get into our best bets and Sunday Night 7, download the Roto World app to receive breaking player news all season long. Stay ahead of the competition by favoriting players on your roster. Get the latest injury updates, player news, and much more delivered right to your phone. It's available in the App Store today. Okay, Drew, one of the questions that you'll see in the Sunday Night 7 contest, how many points total in the game? You got bands going from 0 to 43 all the way to 64 plus. What are you taking?
Okay, so I'm expecting points in this one. The over has taken a substantial amount of money. This was 50.5 not that long ago. It's tickling 53 now. So another big swing in the market here. Again, kind of on the back of expectation that wide receivers are available for the Chargers. And on top of that, I would add that the Chargers have a very, very sincere back against the wall, must try to win this game to save your season kind of mentality. So going forward on fourth in their own territory, giving the Chiefs some short fields, and in general, not settling for field goals, but going for touchdowns is my expectation here. So give me the top of the market, 64 plus, expecting a little bit of a shootout.
Yep, you've stolen my selection, so I'm just going to go with it as well. I'm going 64 plus too. I think Justin Herbert, he looks healthy. Looks like he's past the ribs issue. Gets Keenan Allen and Mike Williams back, we think, judging by the market movement. So huge potential for a shootout. And obviously we know what Kansas City can do. And the big shootout they had with San Francisco pretty recently. So give me 64 plus as well. All right. And also just a reminder that you can go download the NBC Sports Predictor app and play Sunday Night 7. You could win $100,000 this weekend. It is free. All right. Best bet of the weekend, Drew. What do you got?
Sticking with the same game. If the Chargers were +6, I would have been stumping for +6 as the best bet. But since it is now moved to 5, I'm going to go with the Chargers money line here at what is currently hanging +210. Again, back against the wall here for the Chargers. Wide receivers back. Justin Herbert in general has had just a tremendous read on how to attack this Kansas City defense over the years. And I think realistically, the Kansas City with a couple of hiccups in their wide receiving core may give opportunity for the Chargers to do a little bit of kind of critical kind of game state at the end of the game, sort of make the key stop here. Derwin James, I would expect the key on Travis Kelce, and then Pat Mahomes is going to have to get it done with Kadarius Toney and the other cast of characters there. Not expecting Juju Smith-Schuster to be available, and obviously they have recently put a couple of their wide receivers on IR. So it's going to be a Chargers for me. I would love to see them get into like the 30-point range here. I don't disagree with your take. They're poorly coached. That's true. But at the same time, their aggressive mentality plays into, I think, a good spot here where Kansas City, I think there's a realistic chance that one of the reasons that their power rating has kind of just floated up, even though they haven't been performing all that well, is just there's been a vacuum at the top. And so, people have been upgrading the Chiefs, even in, they haven't really shown us much the last handful of weeks. And I think ultimately this is a decent sell high on a Chiefs team against a Chargers team that's starting to get healthy.
Okay. Well, I like you a lot, Drew. I always have. And I wish nothing but the best for you. But I really need the Chiefs to win this game because I've got Patrick Mahomes MVP into absolutely everything now at the +150, +200 range. So
this is cheap insurance because that can still happen.
If he has 5 touchdowns and 500 yards and a loss, I'll take that. But outside of that, I need the Chiefs to win that game. Also need the Cowboys to win as 1.5-point favorites in Minnesota. That's my best bet of the weekend. As we talked about with Brad, I do not believe in the Vikings. I think this is a fake team that is being propelled by basically Justin Jefferson and 2 pass rushers. I don't believe in the Vikings secondary. I think that CeeDee Lamb and the Cowboys will eat. I think if they want to run the ball as well, they can do that perfectly well against the Vikings defense. And I think that with Anthony Brown back as well. Both of those guys, I think the Cowboys defense will be much better than it showed against Green Bay. This is a really important game for the Cowboys because they don't want to fall back into the pack in the NFC. I don't have any issues around motivation. I think that Micah Parsons is going to be rushing the passer again. If Christian Darrisaw can't go, perfect. That's even better. I just think the Cowboys are in a different tier to the Vikings, even though their record would not suggest that. I think that when we look back on the season, we're going to see that there was a gulf between these two teams. And I think that gulf becomes apparent on Sunday, and the Cowboys handily defeat the Minnesota Vikings.
Okay, well,
let's knock out Kevin O'Connell's coach of the year case.
Oh, would love to see that. Fair play. You stole mine. I know you got it before me on Dallas. That would have been my look, but ultimately you get it first. That's fine. I'll take the Chargers. You get the Cowboys. But I love I love the way you laid that out. I generally think this is a beautiful spot to bet Dallas, and in general, just every matchup advantage I look at favors Dallas for me in this one. So that offense flexing a little bit on that fast turf. It's going to be a fun game to watch.
Yep, it's going to be fun. Going to be fun to watch the Cowboys win. All right, don't forget to check out NBCSportsEdge.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thanks for everyone watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. And if you're listening to us in podcast form, don't forget to subscribe and rate us. From Jay Croucher and Drew Dinsick, good luck with all your bets this weekend, and we'll see you next week.